Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining the fourth and final portion of this four-part series. Excuse me, for the cybersecurity layoff support group. My name is Steve Shelton. I am the CEO, founder, and chief resilience officer for Green Shoe Consulting. Excuse me as I'm causing issues. Bear with me for just a second. All right. That was actually Ira calling in to make sure everything was going okay with this. So we are good to go. And I am online now. So I apologize for the issues, and I don't know how to mute myself online, but that's okay. So, as I mentioned, we are in part 4 here. So we're going to jump into the session titled Strategy Summit, Your Next Chapter. So, as you can see by the picture outlined here, we are going to be focused this week on building out a 30, 60, 90-day job search personalized plan for everybody joining on this call or watching the recording. And so, we're going to start off first by going into a little review of what is CLSG, if there are not enough acronyms in cybersecurity, which stands for Cybersecurity Layoff Support Group. And so the whole purpose behind this is that there are a lot of layoffs, a lot of reductions in force, and a variety of folks that are experiencing job losses, not by choice. And so we want to be able to support everybody that is going through that, because a big part of the mental and emotional experience of going through an involuntary job loss is that we can also often feel embarrassed, ashamed, guilty, all kinds of feelings that take us out of being our best and lead to a lot of not so great or not so healthy coping mechanisms to deal with that. So, a big part of that being isolation. So, we want to offer up the space for everybody that is going through a involuntary job loss to gather with others that are going through a similar experience, learn some skills to maintain positivity, optimism, and develop some mental resilience. So that way, as you're going through your job search, looking for that next opportunity, that you are attracting what aligns with who you are and what you're looking for. So, to refresh or recap our guidelines for this community, understanding that while this is a live event, confidentiality is going to be a bit of a challenge, especially having a recorded component to this. But we ask that anybody participating in this space does not go off and share anything specific in regards to the participants, because we want to maintain that psychologically safe space. We will open up the Zoom session after this, and I'll share a link here shortly to also do that. But we also want to maintain a level of respect with everybody participating. So that means that if somebody is messaging in the chat, that we are treating them with a level of respect. We're also being empathetic, which means listening with curiosity. That requires a bit of checking the ego at the door, and then also without judgment. So our threats today are no longer saber-toothed tigers out in the wild that are trying to kill us, but our threats really come in the form of other people's opinions, expectations, and judgments. So that judgment is a big, big killer of participation. So we want to be mindful of that. And then also, everybody that gets to participate in this space, it's fully voluntary. So we're not expecting you to come in and participate if you are not comfortable doing so. The beauty of that, even being in this space, is that you're going to learn a variety of components that are going to help you in how you're feeling mentally and emotionally, but also in your job search process. So just hearing others participate is going to be helpful. In terms of our objectives for today, this is the putting it all together session. So we're going to review a little bit in regards to what we've done in the first 3 weeks, but then we're also going to get into building out that 30, 60, 90-day personal job search plan. And so I've got a worksheet that everybody can get access to. We'll include that as a link in the YouTube recording. And then we'll have a close and a call to action. So with that, if there are any questions as we go through, I'm going to try to keep my eye on the live chat. Looks like we've got somebody that's joined us already. So anybody that's joining in, if you have any questions, let us know. But we're going to jump in and get started here. So with that being said, as part of our process, so anytime that we have a meeting, anytime we have a session, this is a standard practice that I provide from a coaching standpoint, is that one, we believe that everybody needs to be an effective leader in their own life. That includes in the workplace. Even if you're not leading a team, managing other people, whatever, we still believe if you want to feel the most fulfilled that you can be, you have to be a leader of your own life. That starts with being able to reflect on what's working and what's not working, but also celebrating wins, even if they're small wins, right? So we'll get into that. But the idea here is if you are a leader of other people, if you're a manager, director, leader of the organization, being able to provide a check-in with your team is an extremely easy and effective way to, one, get involvement and contribution from your team members to help them feel like they belong, and then hear what's going on with them so you can basically support them more effectively. With that being said, a standard check-in, fairly easy, right? So there's a variety of ways that we can go about it. One of the ways I like to do that is on a scale of 1 to 5, what's your energy level like right now? If 5 is the most and 1 is the least, where are you at? So if you check in with a 3, what could get you to a 4? If you check in with a 4, what could get you to a 5? That type of thing. But also understanding what's causing that number. What are the symptoms that are helping you understand that? So for me right now, I'm checking in with a 4. I didn't sleep that well last night, but I feel pretty good. So understanding that, then we move into what was a win for you last week. So what we've been operating off of for the 4 weeks here has been leaning into our primary values that we've discovered or identified. And so for me, I was able to practice one of my primary values is treating others the way that I want to be treated. And so there's a lot behind that in terms of how I actually execute on that. But I want to be treated with respect, kindness, integrity. When I'm interacting with somebody, I really want to feel like they are paying attention to what I'm saying and that they're not distracted and not there in the conversation. So I was able to live that yesterday specifically. ISECA Convergence was going on in Chicago. So I was able to interact with a few great folks. Ira Winkler, in fact, is in Chicago at the ISECA Convergence as a speaker. And so I got to sit down with him in person and chat it up a little bit, which was great. And so that was my win. So I was very happy about that and just full of joy over it. So we go into that. But then the converse side of, or the flip side of that coin is where are you struggling? So not only do we identify the positive aspects, but we identify what's getting in the way of your goals, feeling the way that you want to feel, etc. So this idea of what's making it hard for you, what are the challenges you're faced with? For me, in terms of that check-in with energy level of 4, part of the reason why I'm struggling to be at a 5 is that my sleep was impacted by a couple of things last night. I have a house full of kids between the age of 15 and 22, and also had some noises going on that have woke me up in the middle of the night. So that was part of my struggle just from an energy level standpoint. But the check-in could be anything related to the goals that you've set, identifying your values, living your values, whatever it is. It could be small things, big things. The smaller the better because we can focus on those too, and those are quick wins. But that's basically it on that point. So I'll encourage you, if you're watching the recording, to take a minute or two, just reflect on those things, write them down, because there's something that magically happens instead of just talking about it, thinking about it. When we put pencil to paper, pen to paper, it actually allows us to look at it in a much different perspective. So take a minute for that. And then we'll jump forward here, just checking in on the chat. But let's get into the review. So the first thing we did in week 1, as I mentioned, is we got into what are some of the values that really drive your words, your thoughts, and your actions. So often when we get into the workplace environment, whenever we've come into the workplace, if it's after high school, after college, whatever it is, there's a thing that occurs where we might start out into a specific career path with a very clear understanding of why we're doing it. Those reasons, the reason why, or the more reasons you have, the better. But oftentimes when we start off in a career path, we have those reasons pretty close to us. Well, what tends to happen as we start to spend more time in that career path, we start to lose sight of why we got into it because we're focused on how we're doing, what we're doing, whatever it is. And that's where our focus goes, opposed to having that reflection on, am I still in alignment with why I'm doing what I'm doing? That also is what connects us to our meaning and our purpose. So this aspect of what we went through in week 1 was really to identify what are some of those main values. Actually, that's week 2, excuse me. So what we did, let me back that up. So week 1, we got into our personal support plan. The idea was, as I mentioned in the original outset of this session, is that oftentimes our identity gets aligned into our work, our title, etc. And so when we lose that job or title, then there's a mental occurrence that occurs where we start to think about the loss of that as a personal reflection on us. And so it's an impact and a negative impact on our identity. So we feel embarrassed, ashamed, guilty, all these things that take us away from being at our best. And so that often leads to a behavior where people will isolate instead of reaching out for support. Isolation then is a further aspect of allowing that burden of stress to increase, burnout, whatever you want to call it, but those fears, doubts, and anxieties tend to increase when we isolate. So the idea here is starting to identify what are the various levels of support that we have access to. So that inner circle is really the core group of the person or people that are so close to you that you know you can call and depend on them. They have unconditional support. They're there for you no matter what. And as you start to extend outside to the other circles, you start to get further away from that tight level of connection that you would have in the inner circle. So that outer circle gets into people maybe you've worked with, you didn't keep close contact with, maybe you've met at a conference or whatever it is, but they're acquaintances, but they're still part of your network. So I've got over 5,300 connections on LinkedIn. I guarantee I don't have extremely tight connections with a good amount of those people. However, because of the content, because of my connections, whatever it is, I might be able to reach out to one of those distant connections or one of those that are in the outer tier of this personal support plan to be able to make an ask, right? So that gets into the next level of things that we did in week 2 and 3. But the idea here is being able to reach out to one person in your map, sending a message simply about how you're doing, because also that creates connection. So when you have people that are close to you in that initial circle or outer 2 or 3 circles, being able to maintain relationships is a big aspect of helping to provide support, right? And feeling like you're not alone. Secondly, gratitude kills fear. So then we tasked everybody or gave the activity rather to thank somebody in a specific way and how they've helped you. One of the things that I've looked at, because this is part of my world, is who's been a major impact on me in terms of my perspective of the world, of my career path, etc. And so there's a variety of folks that really have made a very big positive impact on me. And so one has been, I'm a yoga instructor. I'm certified, and I got certified to teach yoga to athletes by a wonderful woman in North Carolina. She is just a joy to be around, and she had a major impact on me in terms of that path for me. So that would be somebody I would send a gratitude message to, and I will actually do that after this session. But that focusing and pulling that focus away from those unhealthy traits of the fears, doubts, and anxieties and back into things that put us into our better state is what we're trying to focus on. That's an aspect of optimism, positivity, and resilience. So that was our week 1 focus. Week 2 then brought us into our personal compass and the values. So this aspect of identifying what are those 5 core values that we think of that really dictate our words, thoughts, and our actions. And so when we can identify those and continue to have those as top of mind for us, those become our decision-making framework in terms of how we talk, how we think, how we act. And if we can live in alignment with those more times than not, we're going to feel a lot better and less conflict that we're experiencing internally, but with others too. So this idea that we developed a personal compass statement by taking a specific value, including it in the statement of my compass is this value because of this reason. And this is the why behind it, right? So it's reconnecting back into those things that really matter to you. And the more that we can build on that and use that as the foundation, the better we're going to feel. We're going to feel more, we're going to live in congruency and alignment and less conflict and friction when we're not. That's the idea. So the example here is that if your value is innovation, and I know a specific buddy of mine that is one of his core values, my compass is innovation because I thrive when I'm solving new challenges with creative tech solutions. I'm sure a lot of people in the tech space and cybersecurity can relate to that, but this is part of the thing. So what is your specific value? This would be a good opportunity here if you are watching the recording or if you're online right now to be able to identify or pause the recording and get your values out from week 2 and reflect on those and see if that anything else new pops up for you, or just reflect on those things. So you can go ahead and pause now and come back and we'll move forward when you're ready. So moving into week 3, goal setting. So we talked about the fact that from a goal setting standpoint, the SMART acronym has been used a lot over the years. So specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and time frame based. Those are the components that a lot of people set their goals with. Part of the challenge with that is that it doesn't always include some of the things that we can control. So the idea here is that we'll use some of those acronyms within this, but we really want to focus on what we have control over. That allows us to feel, one, more security, more movement and momentum. But when we start to focus on the things that we don't have control over, that's when we start to feel frustrated, irritated, annoyed, angry, all the things that take us out of being our best selves, opposed to when we focus on the things that we have control over. And if you think about what we actually have control over, it's pretty small in regards to the number of things we don't have control over. So clearly, in terms of what we don't have control over is how other people act and respond, the weather, the state of the world, the economy, all these different things. In terms of what we have control over, we have control over our attitude, our effort, the energy that we have in a given moment. We have the ability to focus on how we respond, how we talk internally to ourselves, how we talk externally to others. We have control over our body language. So there's things that we can utilize in that aspect of control, the locus of control, if you will. But utilizing those things, then it's an opportunity to say, okay, when I'm not at my best, how do I show up body language wise? Because I guarantee everybody on this call, if I said, you'll get $1 million if you can tell me what the person behind this curtain looks like if they're depressed. So the idea would be somebody who's depressed is not looking up and positive and a smile on their face. They're probably looking down at the ground, a little hunched over. Their face is more sullen, right? So there's behaviors or body language things that we can see and address. And so in that, the way that the body goes is how the mind goes is what we look at. So this aspect of, if that's how you're feeling in the moment, just changing your body language has an immediate impact on your state. That's this type of stuff that we want to get into. So from a goal setting standpoint, we focus on things we have control over. So one, we kind of set this up as a stair step to the goal that you want to achieve. But the idea is much like a map. You have a starting point of where you're at. The goal then is something that you want to reach towards. The bigger and the more audacious, the better for us in terms of what we like and what we try to plan with. But the idea here is that we focus on looking at process goals. These are specific actions and behaviors that you can engage to improve your performance, but these are things you have control over, right? We'll get into some examples too before we get into this week's practice. But the second thing we look at is performance goals. These goals focus on achieving personal standards of performance regardless of the outcome. So this could be something in regards to if you picked up a new hobby. You would look at how do you start to develop the skills to get improved at that, and then you can measure that by, did you perform that specific task today in a way that you wanted to or not? And then 3 is the outcome goals. So we want to place 20% focus on the outcome that we're trying to achieve. The challenge in our environment in cybersecurity, whether you're on the practitioner side or the vendor sales side, is that there's so much focus on the outcome. We're trying to get this thing done. Or as a salesperson, you have a $5 million annual quota. So there's so much focus on that. And when you put all your focus, or the majority focus, on that outcome goal that you don't have control over, any slip up, any goof, any mistake along the way makes the fears, anxieties, and doubts related to achieving that goal so much bigger, which then makes every step and goof, instead of a learning experience and a way to grow and evolve and learn how to better move towards that goal, it becomes a detriment. So that's what we want to avoid. We want to focus on 20% of the outcome to make sure we're steering in the right direction, but 80% needs to go towards the process and performance goals, because that's what we have control over. If you have questions, let me know. But this is an opportunity. If you're watching the recording, if you've done the work previously, you can pause now to reflect on those outcome goals and where you've been measuring yourself for your process and performance goals. But if you also have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. You have my contact information through this presentation and through the YouTube channel. But that's what we went through. So the idea here now is that we've gone through support plan, making sure that you're reaching out to people and not isolating, but you're engaging. You're also focused on messages of gratitude. Gratitude kills fear. We've identified some values that are some of your core components that you focus on and what you look for in terms of how you talk, think, and act, and then putting that together in a value statement and now goal setting. And so today's focus, before I get into that, this is one of the examples of putting that all together. And so again, this is an opportunity to pause here, take a look at that, and make sure that you're aligned and you've done the work behind what's your value statement, what strength do you want to focus on and highlight for the week. From a networking standpoint, that was the other component we got into last week, is networking can often be an acute aspect of distress. Networking's awkward, uncomfortable. It's not a natural behavior. So we have some skills in terms of how we can get into that. What we focused on last week was having a give and a gain. So many people focus on taking from others. What can I get from somebody else? How can I use them, exploit them, manipulate them, that type of thing? That doesn't lead to long-term relationships and healthy relationships. And so we want to change that behavior to building a more effective relationship focus. And so the primary focus from a networking standpoint is being able to give things, whether that's sending an article to somebody and saying, hey, I thought you might be interested in this, or I saw you in this article. I thought this was really interesting. I'm curious, what was this thing, or what was your perspective on this? That's a thing of showing more that you're trying to give something of value and not take from them. But then the gain or the ask is something specific. So the more that we can get specific and make it not a big ask, but an idea of like, hey, I'm trying to get a position at this company. I know you work here. One, could you connect me with the hiring manager? What's the culture like? Specific asks to help out. You can even get into, it's been a while since I've looked for a job. Would you mind looking my resume over and giving me some feedback? That's a pretty small ask, right? And most people are going to be willing to help you with that. and then having that full 30-second pitch. So from a networking standpoint, like I was at ISACA Convergence in Chicago yesterday, there was a lot of people that I didn't know there. So I could go into that situation with a full mindset of, I want to make sure I talk to 3 people and have my 30-second elevator pitch down in terms of who I am, what are my values, what am I into, and what am I looking for. That then gives people the ability then to align to my values and say, oh, I also have that similar value of treating others the way that I want to be treated. I'd like to help Steve out in some capacity. So his ask, totally reasonable, and I'm happy to help with that. That's the type of thing from an effective networking standpoint we wanted to get into. With that being said, this is the crux of what we want to develop today is a 30, 60, 90-day personal job search plan. So from that, we break it down really simply in 30 days. We want to intense practice and outreach. So we want to be mindful, we want to be intentional, and we want to be assertive. Assertive is very different than aggressive, right? So assertive is standing up for, advocating for yourself, these types of things, understanding what you want and taking action towards it in a reasonable way that aligns with values. Within 60 days, then we want to scale up and we want to convert conversations into an actionable component. Is that an interview that we're getting? What is the conversion that you're focused on? And then within 90 days, we want to consolidate outcomes to interviews, offers, negotiations. Also understanding this is a simplified process. It may not go exactly to plan like that, but we want to have actionable items. So that way we can figure out, are we doing things that are working for us or are we having challenges somewhere? And then we can refine. That's the concept. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch screens here. We're going to provide this to everybody as an attachment to this. But again, the idea here, is that this worksheet is a value add for anybody that is currently in the job seeking role and a part of this group. So the idea here is we built this out from the 30, 60, 90-day components. We've got directives here and fully lined out. So one, we're identifying what are your top 3 primary objectives in terms of your job search. We outline those. And the beauty here is this is one of the high performance components of defining success. What does success look like for you in the first 30 days? So within that, we create 3 objectives within that. We then outline our process goals, which are what we have control over. So what is the first action you want to take? There's a time component. So a little bit of that SMART acronym goal setting component. And then where are you going to do that? By the way, at the end of this PDF, we do have an example or a sample for you to take a look at too. And then that Zoom session we're going to move into after this is the private area where you can ask questions and have full voice and all that stuff. But we get into the process component. We get into the performance metrics. Metric 1, what is that performance metric? How are you going to measure yourself? How do you understand if you're doing the right things at the right time? And then what's the target? We're going to have this done by this date. So we're going to reflect on that date to see, 1, what worked, what did not, and then how do we refine? And then we start to build that out. Next step is within that 30 days is your people and networking component. So who are you going to reach out to? What's their name? What's their role? What's the give and the gain? So I put ask here, but understanding we're going to stick to the same process that we've already worked on. What's the specific give that you're going to give to that person? And what's the ask that you're going to have? So again, since Ira is co-hosting this and at ISACA Convergence right now, if I didn't know Ira or if I didn't have a relationship with Ira, I might go to his LinkedIn profile, look at the things that he's posted to find out what are some things that might be important to him. And if I wanted to reach out and start to build a relationship with him, and hopefully Ira is not against me sharing this, but I would then say, oh, if he posted a specific article and had something to say about it, I'd read that article and then I'd be able to say, oh, there was something else I thought was interesting. Maybe I'd like to get his perspective on it. That's a small ask, but that shows, one, that you took some effort to actually look at something that had some significance or mattered to him. instead of the standard, I'm a salesperson and I'm reaching out just to try to sell them. That's transactional, does not build relationship. Or I'm looking for a job, help me. That's not a great ask, right? You're not giving right away and you're not trying to build a relationship. We want to build a relationship and find out if there's a way that you can get into it. Because one, if you didn't know the cybersecurity loss, job loss group was operating and something that was serving the community, if you're in between jobs and you reached out to them, that would be a good opportunity to say, hey, I'm having a hard time with this. I'm wondering if you could help out. He could point you to this as a resource, right? So the networking component, and then my favorite and the biggest thing is just the self-care resilience check-in. So we want to have a weekly ritual for that resilience check-in, but also from a self-care standpoint. So one of the things that I've been looking at is the fact that our routines get disrupted when we have a job loss situation, right? So the idea is if you had a routine set up for your workday and then that workday is gone, you now have a lot of time throughout the day that now is open to you. A lot of people can run into challenges in terms of having that routine just disappear. So part of what we need to do is create a routine that allows us to feel like we have some control and certainty behind what we're doing. So that could be blocking out time to do things that really help you feel or generate some self-care. So that could be exercising, that could be reading a book, that could be gardening. There's a variety of things that you could incorporate into it. Excuse me. That also get into some self-care and just fill you up internally. So that's part of this self-care component. And then the mini reward for those wins. Again, we started off the check-in with identifying a win from this past week, celebrating it, because that's a big aspect of neuroplasticity, rewiring your brain to focus on gratitude, good, positive stuff, opposed to having our brains go into the majority of that negative self-sabotage, self-defeating brain, that overly criticizing self that we all have and deal with. We want to focus on those wins and the gratitude. And then finally, again, with that check-in, what were the things that got in the way? What are you struggling with? What was the obstacle? How do we overcome that thing? That's an empowering aspect and perspective. Then we'll move into the 60-day component. And so the 60 days just builds on the 30 clearly. But the idea is now we're looking at, we had 30 days of operation. We're we had 59 days of operation. But building into this idea, oh my gosh, I'm stepping over my words. So we had 30 days that we just completed. Now from 31 to 60, we want to focus on what's the new definition of success. Are we refining that? Are we sticking to those first three success criteria we had in 30 days? I'm sure you've learned more over those first 30 days. And so taking that learning and applying that to refine into what do we want to focus on now for the next 30 days to go into section 2. So again, we'll hit on the process, performance goals, the metrics, the networking component, and continue to grow and scale outside of that. We get a little bit more summarized in terms of the skills to practice and learn, the self-care check-in, and the obstacles and the mitigation, but it's the same thing. So we're just continuing to reinforce this, but we have a working document, a living document that we can utilize to grow off of. And then after those 60 days, we get into the 90. So like I mentioned at the outset of this, we're really focused on how do we continue to push, be assertive, not in an an aggressive, what's the right word I'm looking for? I'm forgetting it. And I don't have anybody that's chatting me up to help me out. But the idea is we really want to focus on continuing to take what we learned over those first 60 days and being assertive and still maintaining that same urgency you had, because this is part of the challenge. When we're not getting the results that we want in the short term, it's really easy to get discouraged, to feel like we're not good enough, that we're not doing the right things. That's the fears, doubts, and anxieties. The whole point of this is having an anchoring component for our mindset to stay positive, optimistic, and resilient. And so when things are not working the way that we want them to, it's very easy for us with this document to go back into, okay, What are the things that I have control over? The process, performance goals, and the metrics, and to look at what's working, what's not. So getting back into this, now we're redefining for that 90-day criteria, what does success look like in our top 3 objectives? And then how do we plan our process and performance goals? What do we need to do from a people and a networking standpoint? And then what skills onboarding do we need? And again, the self-care plan. Again, when we start to focus on things where we feel like we're not getting the results we want, it's really easy for us then to start feeling that detachment, that cynicism that we're not getting the results, we're not good enough, it doesn't matter what we're doing, so you can allow your effort to diminish. That's counterproductive. So we want to continue to focus on reflecting and understanding that we're lining with our values, we're living the way that we want to be living because we're choosing what those values are, who we are, what we stand for, and how we're behaving. And then the final notes and reflection prompts. What did I learn about working in alignment with my values? I cannot overstate how important these 2 questions are because it gets your brain to focus on the positive, maintaining that optimism, and really looking at, in an honest, true context, you will learn things from this process. So what are those things? Because reconnecting into who you are, what you stand for, what is it that really motivates and drives you, that's the stuff where you're not looking for external validation, somebody's response from the outside, rewards, or anything like that, because that's short-lived and short-term focus. These things are values, the things that we hold most important. This is the stuff that gets us through the hard times. So leaning back into that, super important. And then finally, what adjustments will I make in the next quarter? Because we're playing the game, the long game, in terms of we want you to find an environment that aligns with who you are and the work that fills you up, opposed to just taking what comes your way. And granted, again, that's easier said than done. And there are situations where you may need to take the first thing you can get for financial reasons, family reasons, whatever it is. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm saying we want to continue to work this practice because you will find the environment that works for you and allows you to thrive and feel so fulfilled. And that's what we want to get into. So with that being said, I know we've gone about 40 minutes. I'm not seeing any chats on the YouTube channel at this point. This is the sample. So I just want to go through this real briefly, and then we'll talk about what's next. So the short example of this is Jordan participated in creating this 30, 60, 90-day plan. If you can see this, okay, I know it may be a little bit small, but we'll have this shared on the YouTube channel as well. Jordan's primary value that they're focused on is perseverance. And one of the beauties of this is having an accountability partner, which I did not talk about in the 30, 60, 90-day plan. I'm thinking about trademarking or copywriting this term of an accountability buddy. Say that 5 times fast. The accountability partner Jordan chose is Mia. So they checked in with Mia on July 21st. And the idea here is that you have somebody that's keeping you held accountable, keeping your feet to the fire in terms of what you say you're going to do and doing it. Because again, when we go to that isolation route, it's really easy to avoid the things that are hard because they don't always feel good, right? Conflict gets us out of our, or when we're out of our comfort zone into our growth zone, that doesn't always feel good because it's not easy. But the beauty is that in that growth zone, outside of our comfort zone, is where great things happen. We start to learn more, we start to grow more, we start to experience things that we otherwise would not have experienced, which good and bad come with that. If you want to define it as such, or things that serve you, things that don't serve you is more how I go about it. But the idea here is that Jordan said the success criteria in the first 30 days for Jordan was to practice the elevator pitch daily and deliver it to 3 contacts. Secondly was to schedule 2 informational interviews. Third was to complete a targeted certification module. So upskilling. It's a great way to take control of where you're at in between jobs, is to focus on your own growth and to make yourself a little bit more attractive and valuable to a future employer. So those were the 30-day objectives or success criteria. The process actions were practice 10 minutes daily, a strengths snapshot, which I showed in a previous slide, after coffee. Super important because if you're doing cool stuff and drinking coffee, just to give a shout out to Jason Elrod, then that aspect allows you to have a routine which you can repeat. So there's some certainty and some stability in that routine, which is also important for us. And then that second process action was to send 2 outreach messages every Tuesday and Thursday. If you notice there, that doesn't sound like a lot in terms of 2 outreach messages on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The beauty behind this is that often we overestimate what we can do in a short time frame and underestimate what we can do in a longer time frame, like a year. So just creating the behavior change to do something has more impact over a long-term progression than not doing anything. So the idea here is that they started small. And when you have that minimum baseline, it's very easy to actually overachieve on that and be like, well, I did 2, I can do 5, right? So there's this brain game that we play. From a performance metric standpoint, 3 deliveries of the pitch by day 30. Again, it's not a big ask or a big get, but it's measurable, and it is something that allows you to create a win because you're not overdoing it or shooting for the stars or shooting too big, right? That second performance metric is 2 scheduled informational interviews by day 30. It's a bit of a challenge there because of the fact this is not fully in your control. However, the more outreach that you have, the better your odds of creating that. So you might want to align that more so to some things that you have within your control. So that's something to look at. And then from a people and networking standpoint, contact a former manager, ask for an intro to a person or a company and hiring manager by this date. The ask is within your control, just FYI. And then contacting a peer at a vendor was Jordan's people connection component, and ask to review a case study. So in this capacity by this date, just saying, hey, I'd like to get your thoughts on this case study, whatever it is, and schedule that. But the outreach is within the control. And then finally, but from a self-care standpoint, they're focused on a 20-minute walk on Saturday. I would encourage that to be a 20-minute walk every day, because the idea here is that especially when you're moving your body, you're going to get more oxygen pushed through your body. It's going to increase your energy, make you feel better, which leads to a better state. And so when you're reaching out and engaging people, that's going to be a better attractor than a lower state, so to speak. From an obstacle standpoint, limited time. So in this capacity, Jordan is saying that due to whatever reasons, they have some time constraints. The mitigation for them is to block 45 minutes on their calendar on Tuesday and Thursday mornings to do these things that they aligned that they would do. Blocking time is a very effective way to prioritize what's important throughout the week. It's also creating that routine. So we know that Jordan is going to have a 10-minute daily practice of their strength snapshot after coffee. That is a beautiful way to create some routine with your morning routine. So also identifying what times of the day are you most effective and most having higher energy. I'm a morning person. I've got a full routine in the morning. So before lunch, I'm extremely aggressive in terms of what I'm doing with my day. In the afternoon, I start to have a little bit of slowdown. So I focus on other activities in the afternoon. Those are things to think about. From a 60, 90-day high level, Jordan wants to be able to convert one informational interview into a short consulting or trial assignment. This is a very cool way to engage, is when somebody does not know you, there's a very low or non-existent level of trust. So one of the easiest ways to overcome that is to say, you know what, I understand that. What if we were able to run a trial or an experiment? What if we just tried for a certain period of time my engagement, see what it looks like, If you're open to not being paid for that period of time, great. If they're willing to pay you for your time, that's also super awesome. But the idea is not to let a no or that lack of a relationship be a barrier to what you're trying to achieve. So there's a variety of strategies to work around that. From a 90-day standpoint, Jordan wants to secure a first on-site or offer conversation and finalize negotiation strategy. There's a lot within that you don't have control over, but that's the outcome goal, right? So that's the focus. So within that, that's the 90-day strategy breakdown. I'm going to switch back into the other PowerPoint presentation here to wrap things up. Bear with me. So our intent behind this, as we mentioned at the start of this, is to offer a space to support those in between jobs, specifically in cybersecurity. The idea here is that we want to be able to engage folks and be able to provide some necessary support that may not be otherwise existent in the market, or that they might not have access to, and we don't want to charge for it. So hopefully within this, you've developed some skills, a more optimistic, positive, and resilient mindset or perspectives than you otherwise would have had. So what I'd like to ask, and this is for those that are live right now, but also watching the recording, is 1, what would you like more of? 2, what would you like less of? And 3, what were any specific takeaways that you had that were helpful? And that's it. So going forward now, this is not the end of this program. This is the end of this series. So what we're going to plan on doing is refreshing this. And so that way, every week going forward, you're going to have access to a live event like this, skill building activities for a 4-week period minimum. And then we'll continue to have recordings available, because I'm going to continue to switch up activities that we're doing, specific themes every week, etc. So that way we're continuing to make things fresh and not boring, because boring leads to burnout as well. But the idea here is that we're providing the space to help support. So 1, I want to thank Ira Winkler, the infamous Ira, also the creator and founder of CruiseCon. Thank you for creating the space and helping to evangelize and generate some awareness on some resources available to folks in between jobs. Secondly, I want to thank everybody for joining, and any feedback that you're able to provide. Let us know how we can continue to help serve you and the greater community. As I mentioned, my company, Green Shoe Consulting, that's what we're focused on, is serving and helping to minimize the stress burden that we're all experiencing, so that way we can perform our best and do a very critical job in cybersecurity of protecting people and technology. So let us know what we can do for you, and stay tuned. We will be refreshing starting next week, same time, same place. So we'll keep posting on LinkedIn to let everybody know what's going on. And I will open up the Zoom session. So that's the next thing. Let me go ahead and connect in our Zoom session here. Bear with me for a second. All right, so I'm going to post this into our chat here. Oh, excuse me, on StreamYard. And then I will post this Zoom session on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. So we'll keep this open for the next 30 minutes for anybody that's open to join and has any questions. Thank you all very much, and be well. Take care.